Alright, another episode of Rick and Morty. This is episode 4, season 1. It's about Rick and Morty, of course, in a simulation simulated by aliens who are trying to extract some of Rick's knowledge, his recipes and inventions, etc., in a covert way. So the first scene is Rick dissecting a rat, and he says, "This is just sloppy craftsmanship." Because we don't know the context yet, in this episode, even though I've told you already, but in this episode, the authors did a unique thing. I've never seen it before, where they keep the audience out of the loop. So normally in movies and shows, the audience will know will know more than the characters. We'll be privy to information that they just don't have, and we know what's going on, but they don't know. Now, in this episode, we don't know any more than the characters do. Except for Rick, we'll find out, has an idea of what's going on. So one of the characters knows more than what we do, and that is, I think, very unique. And maybe if you were a film designer or something, that might be a neat trick to do, because it's just different. It's fairly original as far as I know, and it could make for a great movie. Who the hell are you to treat me like that? Sorry, I had to go for a second. I'm going to make this particular episode in clips and stick them together, so that might save some time for you guys. I don't want to waste all your time. I want to make an information-rich episode. So, last thing that was said, this is sloppy craftsmanship. It brings up two ideas to me. First, we don't know the context of the Rick and Morty episode yet, even though I've told you what it is. We as audience don't know. So it almost references the idea of creationism, and Rick, who's a genius and knows how stuff works, and knows, how to make a good product, is looking at this rat and going, okay, I could do this better, or this could be done so much better. So that infers that a creator would design something. If he designed something, it would be perfect, and it would be efficient, and it wouldn't have problematic, inefficient parts. Now, I don't assert or deny creationism. I don't know. I can't verify it through my own discernment. If it turned out to be true, and I met God, I'd get to find out who God is upon meeting God, and I'd be open to that. If I denied God, I'd find myself to be a liar. And if it happened, and if I asserted God and took someone else's definition and ideas, simplified ideas that are words, to be actual God, if I said God exists and he's this, then when I meet God, I would meet God with the wrong idea of who God is. So I won't get too much into the Bible stuff, but so I'm exactly the same with evolution. I can't fully verify it. We can't go into the past and verify things. We have to observe changes while we're existing, document them, and over generations piece the pieces together, and the photos and the videos and the all the documents, and then say, oh yeah, we can see this happening. That would be to prove evolution. Now, the way that evolution is supposed to work is things evolve, and depending on the foundation of why they evolve, they'll evolve a certain way. So we are these very complex creatures. If you open us up, we even just looking at the striation of our muscles, they look almost designed. They look very efficient, well put together. Like, how could this happen? But with nature, it's like, well, this works. What we have works. It works pretty well. And it would have evolved from simpler organisms that work well. So this is the result of a pattern of probability surviving and mutating in ways that work better than it did before. And if something doesn't work, it might not breed as much, and it will disappear off the face of the earth. So we've got that. That's the theory. And so both of those are just possibilities out there. You know, someone came up with them. One person, or a few multiple people, but always one person in the beginning, came up with an idea, and they presented it to the world. And before that, it only existed in the dictionary that hadn't been sequenced and put together in anyone's mind. So they sequenced some words, they created a hypothesis, they put it out into the world, and then other people were able to judge it, basically. And if they liked it, they take it with them into the future. So the Bible and evolution both are things that a single person came up with, and then other people liked it and took it into the future. It doesn't matter how many people take something into the future. It only means it's a good idea, that it makes sense, that it's convincing. It doesn't make it true. So we have both those ideas. I don't subscribe to either of them. I'm just going to sit around and wait and see. And a little bit of evolution. So the idea that man came from apes is totally just a made up straw man. It's not part of the theory. The idea is that humans, back in the past, humans were once simpler organisms. And what happened was that speciation occurred, which is when, on the level of sex cells, gametes, I think they're called, there was mutations in the chromosomes that hold DNA. So there became more or less in the same species. And so that creature, that family of that creature, when it produced offspring with a different number of chromosomes to the species that it's a part of. And so so now it's a new species. It's considered a new species. A new species can reproduce with another species, but generally, because of the odd number of chromosomes between them, one has 50 and the other has 52. The new offspring has 51, and it's now sterile. It can't produce viable offspring, and so it dies out. So this family that had mutated sex genes couldn't breed with its own species, and so created its own species. It still looked exactly the same, because this is only on the level of sex cells. This isn't on the level of genes. And over 1 million or 2 million or 4 million years, because it couldn't breed with the other members and only with its own group, it would have evolved different characteristics. And so one evolved to look like us. We're like brothers and sisters of this particular pattern of evolution. And then monkeys or apes or chimpanzees or gorillas and stuff like that, they all went in a different direction, and they turned out like they did. Now that's the theory. Where can we see evidence of this? Because a theory is just a hypothesis, but it's often backed up with some observation. So do we see speciation occurring? Do we have evidence of that? Yes, we do. It happens in some varieties of flowers. It's happened, and it's happened in flies, and it's happened in orca whales. So orca whales, they all look the same. You couldn't tell that they're different species, but there's now 3 different species, and it happened within like the last 100,000 years or something like that. So they all look the same, but they can't interbreed. And so what's going to happen over time is they're going to do the same thing as apes and humans did, which is they all look the same now, but they'll become more distant cousins. And so you know how you look like your brothers and sisters a little bit, you look like your mum and dad a little bit, but you don't look like your cousins. That's basically what's going to happen. So speciation happens first, and then this is in the creation of new species, and then the alleles change. This is different from like dogs. You know, dogs are hugely varied. They look like cousins. They don't look like each other. All the varieties of dog. But that's because the changes are happening on the level of alleles and genes, but they're not happening in the chromosomes. They're not happening in the sex cells. So dogs can all still breed with each other, but it's just like if you had children with someone who's no relation to you, then your kid would have hugely varied DNA. Whereas if you had a child with, say, your second cousin, the variation in DNA would be very small. And but you know, it would still be the same species, closely related family. Anyways, the theory of evolution says that all creatures on this planet are family. That's basically what it gets down to. Even species, difference in species, we still came from common ancestors. So there's not actually any difference beyond being able to reproduce and looking different. Monkeys and crocodiles and bacteria, they're all our family. We're one. All life is one. One thing. And the differences are just variation within life. Variation of expression. But it's no more than that. Which I think is a lovely thought. I subscribe to that idea anyways, even though I don't subscribe to evolution yet. Until I've seen more evidence, I can't say that it's a truth. And there's not many things I can say that is a truth. So all animals eat. They have to eat to survive. They all poop. They're all tubes with different anatomies surrounding those tubes. They all have DNA. And they're all alive. And so on that level, like looking through that perception, there's no reason to think that humans are more than animals or different in any way. That's not to say that they couldn't be. They could be. But there's no real reason to think that they aren't. And any claim that says that we are different also fails to provide evidence for that claim. So it's just a claim. So think about that a little bit. And now we're past the first line in this episode. So let's see what Rick says next. Okay. So next thing that comes along is Morty, and he's acting strange. He's saying, this is a beautiful day, the sun is shining. These are strange things for Morty to say. It's out of character. He's too positive. It seems inauthentic. And Rick decides that he can't be reality either. And so we see Rick doubting, and so he therefore looks crazy because he doubts. Because we don't know the context yet as an audience. Now we're in school, and the teacher asks what's 5 times 9. Everything looks normal except for the people in the class don't all look like kids, and I don't recognize them from prior episodes or future episodes. So that's interesting. There's 2 of one guy with orange hair. One of the kids with the hat, I'm sure he moves around within this scene. 1 minute he's at the back of the class, you can see his hat, and 1 minute he's at the front of the class. Morty answers 5 times 9 is at least 40. That's true, but in school and in maths there's a correct answer and everything else is considered wrong. The truth, which is a contextual truth really, is you have a context, and the context points to a specific answer, and if you don't give that particular answer, then you're considered to be incorrect. You're incorrect, wrong, or the information you have given is wrong. But they say correct, it is. What? Way to go, Morty, everyone's clapping. He's the best student in the class. Oh, we want you to be the teacher, teach us. So this is all very odd for Morty's normal day in school. And then they ask, how do you make concentrated dark matter? That's very specific. And then the teacher says, it's the fuel to go faster in space and spaceships. So they even know what it is. So this is oddly specific. The fact that someone, when you're conversing with someone, whatever they say, for me, I consider that this is something that's important to them. Not only is it important to them, but it's what's on their mind. So for that reason, I give it credence, I acknowledge it, and I just go along with it. I'll build on top of it. I don't deny it. I don't reject their experience. I don't cancel their experience. I build upon it. So it's helpful to know that the things people talk about are important to them, and then they become important to me, because what am I going to do? Change the subject and dismiss what's important to people? Now Jessica's presenting a reward for telling us what concentrated dark matter is, and that's odd again. And the teacher says, what a rare opportunity, I think he said. No, he said, wow, that's important. Let's go back. Oh, and she's trying to tempt him with the idea of sexual implication. And interestingly on that, I noticed for myself that I only get horny when I perceive a sexual encounter in the coming future. Not sexual things themselves. Like, I can see a naked body and not feel horny, but if there's the inference that there's a sexual encounter, that's the thing that gets me. I don't know if that's the same for you. Leave in the comments. Tell me what you think. Okay, I missed it. But he basically said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Morty. It's imperative that you make a choice, choose. So he's putting a time pressure on Morty, another manipulative tactic. If you can make someone panic and feel like that time's closing in, then suddenly the FOMO occurs, fear of missing out, and people will make silly decisions because they're afraid of what they could lose, even though they don't actually have it yet. They're still scared to lose an opportunity, a potential, a possibility. Now, Rick noticed all that. That was strange. So he's come in to get Morty, and he's pulled on Morty's arm and said, we've got a family emergency. The teacher then flips poles, goes from hugely positive and manipulating through praise to, force. He's physically grabbed Morty, he's tugging on his arm, and he's saying, if you don't stay, I'll give you an F. So he's resorted to threats. And this is what happens when people try to control and manipulate reality, which is the uncontrollable thing. Now they're in the shower room. Grandpa Rick says, you've got to trust me, we've got to get naked. And Morty doesn't even know yet what's going on, and he still gets naked, and he's more concerned about getting an F in class than the odd nature of what he's being asked to do. I think that the writers have got certain modalities of reality in mind when they've made these characters. Rick represents a certain way. Beth is a combination of Rick and maybe Morty's way. Jerry lives in his mind. He doesn't even notice anything around him. Morty is philosophical. He's sort of ambi Jerry and Beth. So yeah, so they're like levels of modality that people can operate in. And Summer is just, I think, like sort of she's blasé. I mean, you can watch Summer and you can get a picture. Anyway, there's nothing more for a little while, so I'll fast forward and I'll see you in a minute. Alright, just to get up to speed, Rick in the shower revealed that some con artist aliens are simulating this reality. It's not real. Nothing's real. And they're trying to steal Rick's ideas and recipes and inventions. Then it flips to the aliens, and that they're uncomfortable with nudity. It's uncomfortable with nudity. Interesting. So these aliens have a hang-up. There's the idea of nudity, and they do not like it. And therefore, so whenever nudity is presented, they put up a wall and they try to cut themselves off from nudity inside. And that leads to them looking away. And then they can't look back until the thing has passed, so that the idea of nudity can go into their periphery and disappear, and then they can look again. But there's one alien who likes nudity, and so he volunteered to work on the simulation when they're simulating nude people. And the reason that he's different is because he wants to see nudity. So when nudity comes up, he doesn't put up a wall. He wants to see it, and he likes the idea of it too. So he doesn't get hindered like the other ones do. And that's the interesting thing, I think, about it, because this could be any subject, is that when we put up any wall against any idea of something, we hinder ourselves, we end up stopping on that perception, and we can no longer see reality, we can no longer listen to reality, and we can no longer create new realities, because we've blocked ourselves and we're stuck on that thing we've walled off from ourselves. So we suddenly put up a wall, look away from reality, all we see is that thing, we feel fear, we feel scared, we feel whatever we feel that's negative and uncomfortable, until that wall goes down, and then we can look at reality again. So that's what we do to ourselves. And just to be clear, this is happening not because of the external world. It's not the thing in the world that we're afraid of ever. It's external to us, and there's no direct connection between it and our feelings. What's actually happening is our body is reflecting what's on our mind, and the wall that we're putting up in our mind. And we know that because of a later scene, and I'll remember when I get there, so let's wait and see for that. Alright, there was a scene where Rick and Morty were doing a show, an entertainment show, going to rap about concentrated dark matter. Now, because the aliens want something from Rick, something specific, they want something from reality, then they'll basically do anything he asks in order to hedge their bets. There's another scene in another episode where Rick says, "I'm not a nice guy. Niceness is something that stupid people do to hedge their bets." What he means is that to Rick, a stupid person is someone who wants something from reality, who wants reality to conform, and so they're willing to give away what is valuable and precious in order to get it. They give up their agency, their self-agency, their freedom, their self-control, and their self-regulation. They give it all up, and they will change in order to they will change for a reward. And it's like betting. When you place a bet and the bet's coming through, you're about to find out, you feel this anticipation and hope that the outcome will be good. And for that time, that now influences your emotions, and therefore it takes you out of your own control. I think I say that okay. I could probably touch more on it in later videos. After Rick and Morty, I'll talk about this stuff in another series. Another thing that happened, okay, because the aliens will do anything that Rick says because they want something, he tells them to do all this stuff. He says, more audience members or we won't play. He says, do this, everyone who's from a certain place. Everyone in a red shirt, dance around. Everyone else, turn in circles at the rate of 27 times 56 divided by the square root of pi, something like that. And it puts so much pressure on the CPU of the simulator that it freezes. And so it's like on our computers, you run too many programs, too much pressure on the CPU, the computer starts to lock up. So very smart, that's what Rick has done. And then he says, we can run out of the simulation while it's frozen. And so they do that. He also touches on simulation theory, which is the theory, and I don't know much about this, I haven't hardly even read it, I can just assume. My idea of it is that the world is a simulation, and only what you're looking at is constructed. So everything beyond your horizon of vision, it doesn't actually exist. It doesn't exist until you get there. So if I started walking down the street, what I'm looking at, it's simulated, but everything behind me that I'm not looking at is not there. And that would be similar to this episode, a process of a CPU being able to run the simulation without overloading, because it couldn't run the entire universe without, being some sort of supercomputer of all supercomputers, which would be impossible. Now that relates to our consciousness in a way, like there is a modality of being where you can see what is currently on your conscious mind, and only what is on your conscious mind, and then you only have to control that. So you have a lot of CPU power for controlling what is right now, and it's called being in the present. It means that when I close my eyes, the only thing that exists is the back of my eyelids. The rest of the world doesn't exist because it's not on my conscious mind. The only thing that's on my conscious mind is this darkness and the words I'm speaking now, and now they're gone. And now my eyelids are gone. The universe is here. So it takes a lot of processing power off the CPU, and we can live in the moment. Now, with knowledge, the introduction of knowledge makes it very difficult. We're constantly struggling against what we know. The things that we think are lasting and hold in memory, it affects us in such a way that we think there's more. When we close my eyes, I say, no, there's also a world, and there's also my fish tank over there, and 60 fish swimming around, and there's so much processing power going on. And when you do the other one, right, the just seeing what's on your conscious mind, it's a different modality of being, and you will experience life a different way. So that's being in the present moment. Now, most people aren't doing that. So let's, it takes a lot of practice and a habit, and I can't even do it properly, but I can see it at least. And I can understand what it's like from that glimpse. So let's say we're operating in the normal human condition with knowledge. When you put up the sword or shield, the shield is a blockage in your psyche against another aspect of yourself, and that gets you stuck on that perception. So you're no longer seeing reality, and you're no longer able to create reality. And so you're not flowing, you're stuck because you have a blockage that you've created. The shield is when you deem something as true or valuable. Did I say shield? I meant sword. You deem something true and valuable, you already have acquired something. The ego wants to acquire things and say, I have this, or I am this. Once you've got something like that, which you believe is you or believe is true, then you will soldier for that. You will stop considering other people. You will stop considering their hearts. You will stop considering the consequences of your actions. You may consider yourself a moral person, but you will act immorally, and you will feel justified, and you'll feel like this is justice that you are enforcing, while being immoral yourself. And you're doing it because you're doing it in the name of something that you deem as true or valuable. And so, that's why there's so much hypocrisy in the world, where people preach compassion but don't act compassionate. It's due to these modalities of the psyche being engaged in. If you were in the present moment, you would always be live to common decency. It wouldn't matter what other people do, because the only thing that exists is what you're seeing at the moment, and what you're seeing is what's on your mind and what you do. And yes, other people are doing certain things, but it quickly passes away. So you don't get blockages, and you don't get stuck on them, and then you don't retaliate, and you don't need vengeance, because in the present moment, the only thing that's just, true justness, is when emotions have come back to balance, when you're balanced again, feeling content and whatever. So you don't need to enforce something on the world. You don't need to create fairness in the world. If you've been harmed, if you've been made to feel intense and hurt, then you bring yourself to balance, and then all is just again, and no consequence externally needs to be applied. Again, I hope that makes sense. If it was someone else, somebody hurt someone else, True justice is getting the hurt person back to health, back to balance. True justice is not then attacking the person who hurt them and making them feel bad, because that person generally only attacked the other person out of some kind of imbalance. They need healing too. In this modality, we focus on healing people. We are like the ancient cultures. Lived compassion. Despite what you feel, you treat people well, and that determines your status in the group. If you're compassionate to everyone despite feeling terrible at times, despite what you feel, what hostilities or whatever, then you become the leader. And if you can't treat people with compassion because because you can't manage yourself in such a way that keeps your emotions balanced, then you get shamed. And you don't get shamed like, you're a bad guy. Just being told, hey, you're not being compassionate to me, is one of the most shameful things that you can do in some of the ancient cultures. And people shame themselves. They go, oh no, I haven't been compassionate. Better get with it. Anyway, that's this episode is going to be a long one. Sorry about that, you guys. Okay, there's a scene where they go into the main CPU chamber, and they start collecting these processing chips. Now, I might be inferring this, but these processing chips for the simulation, each one acts like a little code. It's a little bit like a smart contract in the blockchain with cryptocurrency. There's a simple code that goes into the blockchain. It's not a human being, it's just a code. It's automatic. And it goes in the blockchain. It says, if these conditions are fulfilled, the money goes here. If the conditions are not filled, the money goes here. And this gets rid of corruption, It's simple, yes or no. So they're collecting these processing chips that are just like that code. And basically, it might be referring to something in our heads. If this condition is fulfilled, well, let's make an exchange. I'll give you what's valuable and precious to me for that. If they're not fulfilled, I'll keep what's precious to me, and I won't give you that. Essentially, human beings would have millions of those, and that causes us to live in our realities, our personal realities, our simulated mental landscape. Now, Morty and Rick start dropping them, throwing them at each other. Rick's like, it doesn't matter if you drop them, And then the next scene is, what's wrong with a little bit of horseplay, mucking around, having fun. Like, that's what our lives would be like if we didn't have all these processing chips, all these little codes, little beliefs, whatever they are, to determine our actions for us and our agency for us. There has to be an authority outside of us that we're giving, that we're empowering, in order for something to take us out of our own agency. And so that's sort of like an analogy for what might be going on. And if we didn't empower any authorities, including our own thoughts, then who would we be? And I like to think of myself as many different people, in the sense that I'm a certain way in certain situations, or when I think certain things are going on. But I'm a different person when I'm home alone, when there is no circumstance. So Ash with circumstance is different to Ash without circumstance. And understanding that, when I walk around in the world and do things when I'm under pressure and stress, I don't think, oh, that's all I am, because I know who I am at home is different to what I am when I'm compelled by pressures. So I think of myself as many people. Okay, here we are. So Rick and Morty got home to the garage. They went through space, got there, Rick typed in the code, and then the simulation broke down. Aliens came out and said, haha, we have what we wanted, was the code to your locker safe. We already had dark matter, the recipe for that. So what they've done is they've inferred that they've already got what they wanted, or that they wanted something different to the dark matter, and that they've got it now. So that's interesting. There's something mental about that. Sometimes people come at us pretending that they want one thing when they actually want a different thing. So, I mean, everyone's experienced this, but a good example might be for women when, certain members of the same species will come to them and pretend that they want you or want just your company or just want this, or that they aren't after anything, but then you find out later that they were just after something. So they've given you the wrong idea of what they're after to make you not suspect anything. So that's a trick, and later in the episode we'll find out that actually they were after concentrated dark matter, but it was they're making Rick and Morty think that they were after this other thing that allowed them to carry out their manipulation to the point where they got from Rick what he thought they already had and didn't want and couldn't possibly be after. Then the other thing in that same scene was that Rick pulled down Morty's pants, okay? And this is what I was saying in the other one. This is how we know that it's a psychological thing that we put our barriers and walls up to. Pulled down Morty's pants and all the aliens turned away. They couldn't look at it. But here's the thing. We find out very soon that Morty wasn't even a real Morty, which means the nudity wasn't real. The nudity was only simulated, and yet they still had that reaction because they weren't reacting to the real nudity because it was a fake nudity. They were reacting to the idea in their mind that there was real nudity there. So there you go. It's all psychological. There's a few scenes with Jerry in them, and I can't extract the deeper meaning, so I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what's going on with Jerry in his simulated world where he's up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. But there's this scene where he's been presented with a trophy and because he's sold his idea, and he's been nominated for something that doesn't actually really exist. So he's got his trophy there. And he says, "This is the best day of my life," and he's almost tearing up. But here's the thing: trophies, not only are they just an external thing, and they don't actually mean anything. They just remind us of the meaning that we gave something, the value we gave something. But a trophy is also empty. Like usually, they're a cup, and they're empty inside, which is representative of what a trophy is. It's just an empty external event. It doesn't mean anything. And even if it's of someone playing golf or whatever a trophy might be, they make them hollow so that they're lighter and you can carry around. Like what good's a solid heavy object? So they make them hollow, and it just represents the emptiness in the things that we live for in life, external things. So we're now at the end of the episode. So Rick and Morty got out of 1, 2, 3 simulations back into reality. So simulation in simulation in simulation reminds me of the last episode, Dream in Dream in Dream. The last episode must have maybe inspired them, in at least the writings of it, inspired them to do a simulation-based one. We see that Rick destroyed the aliens despite their best efforts to scam him. He understood how the scam worked, and so was able to scam the scammers. And the reason he went so far as to blow them up is because, as he said earlier in the episode, they brought Morty into it. Now, Rick didn't care if they tried to scam him because he's so smart, he can't really be scammed. You know, he's fallible, but he's got a lot of confidence in his ability to take on anything in the world, even gods or demigods. So, but because they brought Morty into it, see, Rick, because he loves to be in control of himself, he doesn't care what happens in the outside world as long as he's managing himself and can choose his answers, even if that means changing his mind at a moment's notice. At least he's changing it. But when they brought Morty into it, they brought in something that he values, and therefore they can use to manipulate him. They're crossing a certain threshold, a certain line that shouldn't be crossed. And so that's where Rick draws the line and he blows them up. So that's about the end of the episode. I think that's all I've got. If you guys have any questions at all, please do ask them. I'll make another entire series where I'll just respond to any questions you guys have. We'll do a question and answer series. All I can give is my personal and very subjective opinion, but that adds to the knowledge, well, the information, the collective human information we have stored to draw upon to create new ideas and new understandings. So, you know, whenever we do philosophy or self-reflection, we're adding to this this collective human information, and we're getting somewhere. We're progressing, because even if an idea is not useful at the time, it goes into the storehouse, it goes into the documentation, and then we can draw on it later. Somebody, under the right circumstances, will see the connection between that information and truth. So, I mean, self-reflect, philosophize, you'll be doing the world a favor. And your philosophy is like one thing that the practice of will increase your skills, but not the kind of skills we're used to, not muscle memory, but psychological understanding. You'll learn to, of course, collect data, how to discern that data and verify things. These are the basics that you need to do philosophy, and so you'll necessarily learn them as you practice it, as you try to philosophize. Collect data, discern, how to think critically, to follow logical steps, and how not to jump gaps and come to conclusions prematurely. How to admit you don't know. That's a big one. It's a good skill when you're dealing with people, social circumstances, especially discussion, because when you can admit you don't know, then you're able to, further listen to somebody's argument. You're able to remain emotionally detached while you listen, and entertain thoughts without accepting them. There's so many things with philosophy, I can't even name them all. Those are just the very basics, so that will improve your life in itself. You'll also learn, there's hundreds of fallacies. So, I mentioned straw man earlier. That's where you, on purpose or through ignorance, twist someone's words to sound like they're saying something different to what they are, and then pointing the finger at your twisted version of it and saying that's stupid, that's ridiculous, that's not right. But you've left the discussion. You're not being a rational person. You're trying to manipulate by twisting the other person's argument. That's a fallacy. Ad hominem is another fallacy, where you're discussing something with someone and they put their point forward, and instead of responding to their position or their argument, or even just sharing your own, because it's not about perfectly reflecting another person's argument. You extract the data that you can fathom, and well, you mean you don't do it, your brain does it for you. So you extract the relevant data, and then you produce something, you build upon, you produce something, and that keeps the conversation going back and forth. And you can dismiss the things that are negative that you don't like, because you can't comment on those without, either upsetting, disrespecting, or bringing forth fallacies or whatever, or misleading or something. So you just leave those parts out. Anyway, so ad hominem fallacies, when they present their side, and then you, instead of responding to the argument, you bring the person, the author, into the discussion. And so you point at them and say, no, you're wrong, or you can't think right, or you're bad somehow, or you're referring to the person. Politicians do this all the time. They're always referring to the other party, and they're never, very rarely are they referring to the party's argument. And so they're using fallacies. They're acting like children. They're speaking from ignorance, and they're not doing it for themselves, or to win in with good sportsmanship. They're doing it to manipulate the people who are listening, who don't understand fallacies. So if you do philosophy, you'll learn hundreds of fallacies and how not to commit them in your own mind, and how not to be deceived, and therefore how to scam the scammers who are trying to scam you. You won't be gullible. You won't have like Stockholm syndrome. Like, you won't be so susceptible to narcissists controlling and manipulating you. You'll be able to become aware of when somebody is trying to deceive you. And all this comes with practice. And I'm not saying it's going to happen instantly. It could take quite a while. But don't put a time limit on it. Just try philosophy and see how it works for you. And if you enjoy it, you'll keep doing it, and time will fly, like it always does when you're having fun. And suddenly you'll be this person. You'll go, wow, I'm really glad that I started doing philosophy, you know. I wouldn't be this great person who I am today if it wasn't for self-reflecting. And the last thing I'll say, since I've mentioned governments, is what is the government? Well, it comes from governmente in Latin. It's to govern the mental, govern mind, basically. What they do a lot of things, and we have this definition of what government is, but a lot of what it is to reinforce and keep alive this way of living where you work, you get paid, you get entertainment, you have as much as you want, you get more and more and more, and you can own everything that you get, and you know, it seems really great, but you have no time for self-reflection. There is no allowed time for self-reflection. You get weekends, that's it. You get afternoons, that is it. But there's no time for humanity to sit down, look at themselves, look at the world, and see what's wrong and correct it and come up with better ideas and discuss things. Because it's only through that we'd recognize that we don't have a true good democracy. Because if we had a true democracy, our votes would count towards the policies that get introduced, but instead we elect people to speak for us. And they create the policies, and then they pass the policies, and we vote them in, and then they speak for us. That's not a true democracy. That's an authoritarian system. Because you cannot rely on another person to make the best decisions for you. And in a true democracy, you'd have some say in those decisions. So, I mean, as long as we're not self-reflecting, as long as we're not thinking about things critically, we'll never understand what's kind of going on around us. We need to discuss these things. So get to it, guys. You'll do really well. You'll enjoy it. That's me speaking optimistically. I don't expect the world to conform to that, but optimism is its own thing. It doesn't matter what the world does. It's fun, it's nice, and it's positive, and it's healthy. Alright guys, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in once again. I'll see you on the next episode. I apologize for this being a long episode. I hope it was informative, I hope you enjoyed it. And please give me your feedback. Alright, see ya. What do you think? I know everything about everything?